Police arrested 53-year-old Lorenz Kraus in upstate New York after he confessed to killing his parents and then burying them in the backyard of their home 8 years ago. Officials say they were investigating why the couple were receiving Social Security payments despite not being seen for years.
2017, you took your father's life.
Correct.
And then moments later, or a short time later, you took your mother's life on that same day.
Right.
It's a stunning confession. A 53-year-old man admits to killing his elderly parents. He says to put them out of their misery.
They made it clear that they were going downhill.
Now, Kraus sat down with Craig Floyd from our affiliate at CBS 6 Albany, where he made the stunning confession. That exclusive interview took place last Thursday, just one day after police discovered the bodies of Franz and Teresa Kraus.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head,
Did one parent, did your mom or your dad more so than the other, ask you to take their lives?
They didn't explicitly say that, but they made it clear that they were going downhill.
And then this is the moment just before the 8-minute mark when the interviewer gets Kraus to show his hand, to reveal his cards.
When it actually happened, when your parents died, did they know what was happening to them?
Oh, yeah.
And they knew it was at your hand?
Well, yes, no one else's.
That is CBS 6's Greg Floyd in a masterful interview with 53-year-old motormouth Lorenz Kraus. He extracted a confession that he murdered his own parents, Franz and Teresa Kraus, 8 years ago, buried them in their backyard, and then apparently collected their Social Security checks for years. The question, though, is how? How did he extract a confession so quickly? And are prosecutors going to be able to make this stick? Is this going to be actionable evidence in a court of law?
Did you kill your parents to put them out of their misery?
My concern for their misery was paramount. It was a huge burden to have to face this coming up.
So you alleviated that burden?
You're a good questioner.
Well, he's not wrong. Greg Floyd was a masterful questioner in this particular interview. The question, though, is how? How did he extract a confession so quickly? I mean, to appreciate how quickly 8 minutes is, remember our analysis of the Chris Watts confession. That took 2 agents, a polygraph, which went on for hours, a small army of police and FBI investigators working behind the scenes over several days, as well as his own girlfriend tipping them off, giving them crucial information, and it still took them hours and hours, and all they got after all that was half a confession. So what is the magic ingredient here? How did this interviewer cut through the wheat to get to the chaff? How did he extract a confession so quickly?
How do we do it?
In this analysis, which is really statement analysis combined with body language cues, we'll examine precisely how that happened. And you can apply some of the same techniques for lie spotting or checking the statements in your own investigation.
Worth playing for?
But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you are new to the channel, if you're watching this channel for the first time, maybe we should put my bio up on screen. I'm an author of over 100 books. I've studied the law and I've attended trials right around the world. I've also visited New York City, including Long Island. In fact, I stayed at a hotel just around the corner from where the Long Island serial killer suspect worked and also where he was arrested. Also want to give a shout out to Battle Royale for your super thanks yesterday. Thank you so much for that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button. Every little bit counts. And let's get started. All right, 8 cues in 8 minutes. The interview starts politely enough with a question. And it's a simple, somewhat vague, open-ended question. What happened to your parents? Another example of an open question is just, what happened? Or what is happening? Or what's going on?
What happened to your parents?
The
The first cues we get are all non-verbal. It's not what Kraus says, it's not the content of his answers, it's how he says it and what he does while saying it. And that brings us to number 1, inappropriate effect. In the first second, we see Kraus smiling. Now, a smile within the context of talking about his dead parents, as well as the heat of a police investigation breathing down his neck. It's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to be smiling in these circumstances. The interviewer isn't smiling, and he is trained to intuit the right effect for whatever story he's telling. The interviewer is dressed neatly and his manner is polite and respectful. In contrast, not only is Kraus smiling, he's dressed casually in clothes, far too casually for the situation, and he's wearing clothes he could easily have slept in. If he didn't sleep in them, did he mooch about in them? He's not even wearing socks under his sneakers. Now, a lot has been said about affect as being a tool that you can't use to determine the guilt or innocence of a person. That is often from the defense side of the table. Can you think of a few other cases where, in the context of murder, someone being interviewed just can't stop smiling? Well, I can. Number 2, body language cues. Kraus shifts uncomfortably in his seat at 9 seconds as the interview kicks off. His host doesn't. We also see self-soothing right off the bat. We see Kraus rubbing his exposed left knee while looking quite pleased with himself. And we see the flicker of a smile coming back. Now, why would you look and feel pleased and yet also feel uncomfortable? Why would you look and feel pleased and yet need to self-soothe? Why the contradiction? That brings us to number 3, gesturing. Kraus, you'll notice, is very expressive with his hands. Well, what are his hands telling us? What is he repeatedly gesturing towards? Now, while Kraus is quite inhibited in terms of his verbal disclosures, you can see he is very expressive in his hand and arm movements, as well as his facial expressions. Why the mismatch? I can think of another interview I examined, Gwyneth Paltrow interviewing Amanda Knox, where we see not only a lot of expressive arm gestures, but an emphasis, a repeated emphasis of the hands gesturing back to the neck and throat. Kraus does the same thing. Now you'll notice he doesn't say with words in the first few minutes that he strangled his father, actually with those same hands that he's gesturing with, well, allegedly, and that he killed his own mother. He doesn't say that, again with those same hands allegedly as well. But he knows it, doesn't he? The gesturing, I think, is a combination of nerves and an effort at misdirection. He's trying to distract you from what he's saying, and also from what you're saying, what you're asking, by flapping his arms around. Number 4, slowing down the pace. Another sign of inauthenticity is a mismatch between these quick hand and arm movements we're seeing and talking slowly. It can also simply be talking quickly one moment and then slowing down to a crawl in another. When we see a lack of congruence in affect, body language, gesturing and pacing, all of these are red flags. Another detail you want to look out for in terms of these mismatches is providing a lot of unnecessary detail one moment, but the next speaking generally.
Across Whitehall Road, not Whitehall, Wolf Road, and she fell down on her face. And she had, when I saw her a week or so later, yellow and green, black and blue marks from this.
We also saw this quite clearly with Patsy Ramsey's police interviews in April 97 and June 98. When Larry King asked Patsy to relate the events that morning, her pace also slows.
What's the first thing you remember, Patsy?
The first thing I remember is waking up, getting dressed hurriedly, going downstairs, and putting a few things together to pack to take on the plane.
It's about what time?
It's early morning, before daylight.
Why does the pace need to slow? Why is this happening? What is the interviewee hiding? And that's when we need to pay attention to semantics. And that brings us to number 5, words matter. It takes a certain talent, a certain wordsmithery that some have and some simply don't, a literary-minded instinct to recognize a word that is loaded with meaning, with symbolism really, that seems to suggest guilty knowledge. And what is the first word that gives Cuckoo Mr. Kraus away? It's not so much a word, but a slew of words. It's his first answer to the very first question. What is wrong with it? Well, when Kraus is asked,
What happened to your parents?
now think about that question and think about all the ways that he could respond. What happened to your parents? He could say they died, they disappeared. He could say their bodies have just been found. He could also say, I don't know. What happened to your parents? I don't know. All of those answers make sense. Instead, this is how he answers.
Take me back to the summer of 2017. What happened to your parents?
My mother wrote me a note, which the police must have now, describing her walking across Whitehall Road. I'm not Whitehall, Wolf Road, and she fell down on her face. And she had, when I saw her...
If we simplify it, the question is, what happened to your parents? And he answers, my mother wrote me a note. Is that what happened to his parents? Like the Ramsey case, it's almost like he wants to direct your attention to a note so that you investigate that. Investigate the note, don't investigate him. If we entertain the ruse, though, what is he actually saying? That his mother hurt herself? That she died as a result? Can you see how if you're wondering whether what's going on is misdirection, you're asking what happened to the parents, and then the answer is, well, look at this note. In other words, you're not getting the answer. It feels like that, doesn't it? And so what is wrong with it is that it feels rehearsed. It sounds rehearsed. Like the Ramsey case, it's almost as if he wants to direct your attention to a note so that you investigate that. Investigate the note, don't investigate him. Because what he wants to say is that his parents effectively hinted that they wanted him to murder him, as I understand it, and he's the innocent victim here, right? He is the innocent victim here, and in that, he's the good, obedient son that he was. He simply did as he was told. And that brings us to number 5, knowing when not to talk. When you ask an open-ended question, the trick is to stay silent and let the interviewee volunteer as little or as much as they want. Don't interrupt, listen, absorb what is being said. If the answer is short, follow it up with another open-ended question like, what do you mean? Or can you tell me a bit more about that? Or how has what has happened affected you? In the first minute, we see this demonstrated. The interviewer gives the interviewee a lot of rope. And you know the saying, give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves. And what does Kraus do?
My father also had cataract surgery, and he lost his vision to double vision, so he couldn't be he couldn't drive. So they were losing their independence and so forth. And my mother had a brother who had Alzheimer's, and my father had a sister who had Alzheimer's. They were both in nursing homes. My mother had a second sister who also had Alzheimer's.
So do you notice the misdirection again is, if the question is, what happened to your parents? Why is he talking about what happened to all these other people? And that brings us to number 7, the choice of the words matter. Now, many people who do statement analysis start with the words, and yet so much of what is communicated is nonverbal. The semantics nevertheless direct us with more precision to the exact nature of the criminal psychology. And so in this case, which words stand out?
I'm not Whitehall, Wolf Road, and she fell down on her face. And she had, when I saw her a week or so later, yellow and green, black and blue marks from this. And
he starts off describing in almost photographic terms the color of the bruises on his mother's face. He could just say that she had bruises on her face. He could say that she had dark bruises on her face. He could say that she had blue bruises on her face. But he describes them as yellow, green, black, and blue. That's 4 different colors. He also describes her falling, not just falling, but falling on her face. And he also has got to provide a location for that. It's not this street, it's that street. Why? I think he feels a need to explain unusual injuries on his mother. He also catches himself saying, when I saw her, right? When I saw her with these injuries. Then he realizes that's inculpatory. So he says, So he adds, when I saw her, a week or so later. You can tell he's not just telling a story, he's got to slow it down. Well, he seems to be slowing it down. Why? Well, it could be because he's embellishing it as he goes along, as in anticipated criticisms to his story occurred to him. Now, remember, since in his own telling of events, he killed his father first, and in his own telling of events, his mother seemed to be aware that his father was dead. His mother, bless her soul, likely knowing what was coming, took countermeasures and fought off her attacker. The surprise attack on his father was less surprising on his mother, and I think it showed. I think she did fall, but did she trip, or was she pushed? Was she attacked? Now, what other words or phrases stand out even before he confesses?
They rip your teeth out to try to keep you, the whole 9 yards. So this is in the back of my mind.
In the middle of a police investigation, the words "in the back of my mind," and yet he's communicating it, he's making it explicit. What is in the back of his mind is being made explicit.
They rip your teeth out to try to keep you, the whole 9.
And to appreciate what we are getting at here, we really want these words on screen. In the back of my mind. They rip your teeth out. Just think of what a violent saying that is. And it's really garbled. He says, they rip your teeth out to try to keep you, and then he doesn't finish the sentence.
Widen up the law so that people can deal with these kind of problems in a humane way, in a whatever way that...
So that we can deal with these problems in a humane way, in a whatever way. Now, he's talking about a humane way in the context that his parents are both dead, that their bodies have been found.
And I did my duty to my parents.
Again, look at that in slow motion where he's saying, I did my duty to my parents, and he sort of role plays it, he sort of gestures. What is he doing with his arms when he says that? I did my duty. What was his duty? Do you see how he's expressing himself non-verbally?
It was a huge burden to have to face this coming up.
You'll notice when he says that this was a huge burden, he gestures to the camera. So what was the huge burden? Was it dealing with his aging parents or dealing with the media and the investigation? The gesture seems to suggest the real burden he faces is the accountability side. It's the media and the investigation. Here are a couple more.
This is a horrible situation.
Sure. So you alleviated that burden.
You're a good questioner.
Do you notice in the context of you alleviated that burden, which is a very indirect way of saying murdered someone or suggesting that? Again, he smiles and he makes a joke. Totally inappropriate effect. Now think about how Chris Watts described his situation in similar terms during the infamous Sermon on the Porch.
This is a horrible situation.
Sure.
It was. That's why last night was just horrible, and it was just a traumatic night trying to be here.
It's true. Being home was traumatic because where he wanted to be, where he desperately wanted to be, was with his mistress, who he was having an affair with. And he'd just been away from her for about a week. The point is subjective reality, someone's emotional reality is very, very, very real to them. And you shouldn't underestimate it because it matters a lot to them. And it's an important key to the operative criminal psychology in true crime cases. Chris Watts also described his situation as a nightmare.
And it's just earth-shattering. I don't feel like this is even real right now. It's like a nightmare that I just can't wake up from.
Do you think that part is true? Well, in a real sense, in a subjective sense, it was true for him. And that brings us to the eighth and final technique, knowing when to talk.
Such things like that.
But you have a chance to tell the American people right now.
I want their feedback on my statement. Then I can believe that I can tell the truth uninhibited.
You don't think you're going to get better feedback if you're honest with them?
Do you see it's a delicate balance between listening and being assertive? Too much listening and your subject is going to take control of the narrative and manipulate you. Too much assertiveness and your subject is going to be on the defensive and feel too intimidated to reveal anything. In the same way that Greg Floyd, the interviewer, starts off with open-ended questions, as he approaches the 8-minute mark, he hits Kraus repeatedly with more and more direct, more and more targeted questions.
You need to know this in a way that was...
Your parents asked you to kill them or to take their lives in a merciful fashion?
I think they want me to take responsibility for things.
They asked you to take their lives, to do what they couldn't do?
Implicitly, but not explicitly. The context of all this became to bear on me.
Did one parent, did your mom or your dad more so than the other, ask you to take their lives?
They didn't explicitly say that, but they made it clear that they were going downhill.
Going downhill is a symbolic euphemism, and so it's important to use the same verbiage, use the same terms, use the same constructs, use the same indirect language his subject uses to find a happy medium between an open question and an assertive one.
The statement doesn't mention that.
I know,
the statement
I know,
does not mention that.
Right.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
Right.
At what point did they become deceased?
I need to see a calendar
Can you see how the question, what did you do to your parents, is slightly more assertive, more direct than the first question?
What happened to your parents?
My mother wrote me a note, which the police must have now, describing her walking across Whitehall Road. Not Whitehall, Wolf Road. And
it would be wrong to ask it right in the beginning, because Kraus is already a little broken down at this point. And so this time he responds to essentially the same question without the misdirection of the note.
The statement doesn't mention that.
I know,
the statement
I
does
know.
not mention that.
Right.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
Right.
Remember, the first question was, what happened to your parents? Now it is, what did you do to your parents? And he answers that question, I buried them. You can see what is happening is the interviewer is gradually finding his way to the sweet spot, the appropriate style of questioning that is going to take the subject where he wants to go. He also asks very inculpatory questions in a very gentle, indirect way.
How long was it before you buried them? Approximately.
2 or 3 days, actually.
So your parents' deceased bodies were in your house with you for 2 or 3 days?
Right.
Of course, you can't conduct a masterful interview without drawing a few logical and sensible inferences. When someone tells you a story, when it's a narrative, it's a set of circumstantial evidence, some of which may be accurate, but much of it may be fluff or even blatantly false. It's up to the interviewer also to hold the interviewee to a certain standard of obvious fact.
You can be honest with us.
I know. I'll leave that for the statement that I put on your website.
The statement doesn't mention that.
I know.
But he can only do that if he is well educated, well informed on the case. Critical thinking, absent the true facts or the real context, isn't critical. It's just fanciful. So it's down to the intellect of the interviewer to infer, to intuit the difference. And to a large degree, inference is intuitive. Of course, if it's guided by logic and reason and knowledge of the events, evidence in other words, well then those intuitions are going to be grounded in reality. Floyd had a little circumstantial evidence to go on, but to his credit, the whole situation didn't make sense.
You know, it seems odd to me that both parents would reach the same level at the same time, and you know, that's for other people to determine.
Sure.
But he truly believes that this was in essence a mercy killing, that his parents needed to have their lives ended. So
that's another area that needs to be emphasized. The interviewers got to be careful not to show them, in other words, reserve judgment, certainly explicitly. So anyway, I'm not going to take it further than that. If you're interested in Floyd's jailhouse follow-up interview with Kraus, as well as diving deeper into the context of this case, including Klaus's conspiracy-laden manifesto, please do let me know in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.